little girl kicked out by stepmother after the funeral of father. But Millionaire ran in and said. The church bell was still echoing in her bones when the red car rolled up to the white-columned mansion. The funeral flowers were barely wilting. The black ribbon still hung on the iron gate like a held breath. On the lawn, beneath the spotless steps, a small black girl about 9, tight curls pulled back, white shirt tucked into black pants that didn't quite fit, stood beside a little brown suitcase that had belonged to her father. The suitcase looked older than she was, the leather cracked, the brass corners dulled. She held it with both hands the way a child clutches a life jacket. Her stepmother, pale skin, glossy red dress that hugged her like a secret, heels that stabbed the concrete, swept down the steps with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Beside her strolled a broad-shouldered man in a cobalt blue suit, a man who had learned to mistake other people's pain for entertainment. The stepmother carried a green watering can, the kind meant for roses. The man carried laughter. "Set that eyesore outside the gate," the stepmother said, pointing at the suitcase. The satin of her dress flashed in the noon sun. "And take your clutter with you." "It's not clutter," the girl whispered. "It's my dad's. He said it's for me." "He said lots of things," the woman answered, voice sugar over knives. "He also said he'd live to see you graduate. We both know how that turned out." The girl pressed her lips together until they hurt. She had practiced bravery in the mirror before the funeral, whispered to herself that she could stand in front of the mahogany box and not cry. She had almost managed it. Almost. When the lid closed, the courage that was stitched inside her came loose like a thread. Now the thread dragged behind her as she stepped back from the threshold of the house her father had bought, the house her stepmother claimed like a crown. "You can't stay here," the man in the blue suit chimed in, grinning. "There are policies. Adults only." The stepmother's smile thinned. "Policies, indeed. It's time you learn how the world works." The girl lifted her chin. The window behind the stepmother framed a black safe with its door ajar, bundles of bills stacked like pale bricks inside. Her father had called the safe protection. He had said in the last week that there would always be a place here for her. He had said, "You in this house, you're my 2 promises." She stared at the safe, and her throat closed. "Please," she said, turning to the stepmother, "just let me keep his shirts. They still smell like him." The woman tilted the green can and let a thin arc of water splatter onto the pavement between them. "You don't get to beg in front of my friends," she said, as if scolding a puppy. "Kneel." The girl didn't kneel. She didn't move at all. The man in the blue suit laughed. "Oh, she's got spirit." "Not for long." The stepmother's eyes, a bright, brittle blue, flicked to the hedge where a couple of neighbors pretended they were not watching. "I told you, this is my house now, and we will have standards." Wind combed the trees. The little suitcase shivered at the girl's ankle. "Put your father's shirts down," the stepmother said. "We'll send the rest of your junk somewhere appropriate." The girl set the folded shirts on the edge of the walkway. Her hands shook so hard the top one slid off, white cotton unfurling like a surrender flag. "Look at me." The stepmother lifted the girl's chin with a single lacquered nail. "Your father pitied you. That was his weakness. I correct weaknesses." A car door slammed out on the street, someone arriving or leaving, but the girl didn't turn. She kept her eyes on the stepmother's throat, where a thin gold chain rested like a sunbeam across porcelain skin. Her father had bought that necklace on a business trip. The girl remembered him teasing that the chain cost less than the smile it bought. She had not laughed then. She could not laugh now. "On your knees," the stepmother said again, voice soft and dangerous. When the girl didn't move, the woman tipped the watering can. Water spilled over the shirts, darkening the cotton, running in muddy streams across the concrete and into the grass. The girl gasped, stepped forward to save them, but the man in the blue suit slid between them, blocking her with a pleasant, practiced smile. "Oops," the stepmother sang. "Funerals make me clumsy." "Stop," the girl said. It came out thin, like the last note of a lullaby. The stepmother poured again. The water slapped the girl's shoes, splashed her pants. She felt the cold through the fabric and bit down on the sound in her throat. She would not give this woman her tears. From the street, a voice shouted, "Hey!" Another car door slammed. Footsteps. The girl's heart startled, then dropped. Nobody ever ran toward her. The stepmother didn't turn. "You see?" she murmured to the man. "The problem with pity is that it multiplies." The girl couldn't help it. She looked. A black woman in a neat brown suit was sprinting up the drive, heels clicking, eyes bright with something between fury and fear. The girl recognized her. Ms. Raleigh, the lawyer who had hugged her at the cemetery and whispered, "I'm not done fighting." Behind her, a black sedan glided to a stop at a curb, engine purring like a cat that owned the street. "Stop!" Ms. Raleigh called again, breath ragged. "Don't you dare touch that child." The stepmother finally turned. "Good afternoon, counselor. You're trespassing." Again. Ms. Raleigh didn't slow. She cut across the lawn, skirting the puddle, and put herself between the watering can and the girl, one arm out like a shield. "You will not humiliate her," she said, low enough that only the three of them could hear. "Not today." The stepmother's smile sharpened. "You have no say here. The will is clear." "The will is contested," Ms. Raleigh snapped, "and until a court decides, you'll act like a human being." The man in the blue suit chuckled. "You're making a scene," he said to Ms. Raleigh. "The neighbors love scenes." "I'll give them one," she replied, eyes never leaving the stepmother. "Put the can down." For a second, no one breathed. The girl watched a drop of water tremble at the lip of the spout, swell, and fall. It burst against Ms. Raleigh's heel like a tiny, pointless storm. "Enough," the stepmother said, sugar back in her voice. "This little orphan has had her dramatic day. Time for her to go." "I'm not an orphan," the girl said. "I have my dad." The man in the blue suit tilted his head. "Not anymore." Something inside the girl cracked in a new way. Not the sharp crack of bone, but the long, terrible sound of a floorboard giving way. She swayed. Ms. Raleigh's hand found her shoulder and squeezed, steadying her, anchoring her to a promise she could not see. "And where exactly?" Ms. Raleigh asked. "Do you propose she go?" The stepmother gestured with the watering can toward the street. "Away. There are programs." "There are also penalties," Ms. Raleigh said, "for child endangerment, for unlawful eviction, for cruelty." The blue-suited man leaned in. "Who's going to enforce those? You?" His grin widened. "Good luck." The black sedan's driver door opened. A polished shoe touched the asphalt, followed by a tall man in a white shirt and pale trousers, no tie, jacket folded over his arm as if patience were something he could shrug on and off. He had silver at his temples and a stillness that made the street itself seem to lean closer. He closed the door without haste, straightened, and took in the scene. The stepmother in a red dress with a green watering can, the man in blue smirking, the child with a wet hem and a suitcase older than her years, and the lawyer standing like a wall. The stepmother saw him and brightened. Money, recognized money. "Ah," she called, lifting the can in a little wave, "you're just in time. We were finishing up a family matter." The man didn't answer. He walked up the drive, unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world and the power to make the rest of them borrow from it. As he drew level with the girl, his eyes flicked to the shirts, soaked and clinging, and something cold moved in his gaze. The stepmother touched the man in blue on the arm. "This is Mr. Hale," she said, loud enough for the neighbors. "A friend, investor. We were just discussing renovations. The fountain out front, the stale old memories inside." The newcomer stopped at the edge of the puddle. He looked from Ms. Rowley to the child and back, as if taking attendance for a class only he could teach. "What's her name?" he asked quietly. The stepmother opened her mouth. "Let her say it," he added, still not looking at the woman in red. The girl swallowed. "Maya." "Maya," he repeated, as if the syllables were a key he was turning. He nodded once, then lifted his eyes to the stepmother. "And you thought it was a good day to pour water on a grieving child's clothes." The stepmother laughed, light, dismissive. "Oh, that? A misunderstanding. Children need firm boundaries, and it is my house, Mr. Hale." He considered the white columns, the red carpet of brick, the open window where the safe gleamed, then the watering can still dripping like a metronome. When he finally looked back at her, his voice was pleasant, almost bored. "You're right about one thing," he said. "It is a good day." "For what?" the man in the blue suit scoffed. "For teaching you the difference between possession and ownership." He pulled something from his jacket, folded documents, thick as a novel, and held them like a verdict. "As of 9 this morning, this property is held in trust." The stepmother blinked. "In what?" "In trust," he said, turning slightly so his body shielded Maya from the sun. "For one beneficiary." Ms. Raleigh exhaled a sound that might have been relief or gratitude. The girl couldn't tell. Her ears roared with a sudden, impossible hope. "Who?" the stepmother demanded. "Who's the beneficiary?" "Me." Mr. Hale's eyes were sky-cold. "No," he said. He dropped his gaze to Maya's wet shoes, then lifted it past the stepmother's shoulder to the gaping neighbors, to the flag drooping above the door, to the memory of a promise made by a man in a mahogany box. When he spoke again, his voice carried to the hedge, to the open windows, to the whole street that had pretended not to see. "This house," he said, "belongs to the only person here who didn't forget how to love him." The watering can slipped in the stepmother's grip. Water sloshed. The man in the blue suit stopped smiling. Mr. Hale took one step forward into the puddle, unbothered by the stain spreading across his pale trousers. He looked at Maya, not past her, not through her. "Maya," he said, the name steady as a hand, "go pick up your father's shirts." She couldn't move at first. Her knees wanted to give, her lungs to close. Then she reached down, gathered the wet fabric against her chest, and felt the weight of it, the simple, ordinary, irreplaceable weight. "Good," Mr. Hale murmured. He didn't raise his voice, but the air seemed to tighten around his words. He turned back to the stepmother. "Now you," he said softly, "drop the can." The green watering can slipped slightly in the stepmother's hand. For the first time since the funeral, her smirk faltered. Mr. Hale's quiet command, "Drop the can," didn't sound like a request. It sounded like a sentence already passed. Her fingers trembled. The man in the blue suit glanced at her uneasily, whispering, "Just put it down." But pride is a stubborn thing. She forced a laugh, trying to recover her arrogance. "This is absurd. You have no authority here. This is my house." She gripped the handle tighter, water dribbling from the spout onto her red heels. Mr. Hale didn't flinch. He stepped closer, the puddle spreading beneath his shoes, and looked directly into her eyes. "Your husband built this home for his daughter, not for you, and certainly not for your cruelty." Gasps echoed from the neighbors, leaning against the hedges, suddenly bold enough to inch closer. The stepmother's face drained of color. "That's not true," she snapped. "The will is here," Ms. Riley cut in, pulling a folded document from her case. Her voice trembled with the force of long-suppressed truth. "Filed, notarized, and binding, the house and all assets were placed in trust for Maya. You've been lying to everyone." Maya's small hands tightened around her father's soaked shirts. She stared at the lawyer, then at Mr. Hale. "For me?" she whispered, as if the words were too heavy to lift. "Yes," Ms. Raleigh said softly. "Your father wanted you safe. He wanted this home to always be yours." The stepmother's knees nearly buckled. She shot a desperate glance at the man in blue, but his confidence had already dissolved. He stepped back, muttering, "I didn't sign up for this." His eyes refused to meet hers. Mr. Hale extended his hand to Maya. His voice, steady but gentle, reached every corner of the lawn. "Come here, child." She hesitated, then stepped forward, clutching the damp bundle of cotton. When her small hand slipped into his, the weight of fear seemed to ease off her shoulders. He turned her to face the crowd of whispering neighbors. "This girl," he said, "was about to be thrown into the street on the day she buried her father. Not by strangers, but by those who vowed to protect her, and not one of you stopped it." His eyes swept across the silent faces until several looked down in shame. "You should remember this moment, because I will." The stepmother finally dropped the watering can. It clattered on the stone path, water splashing her dress. "You can't just take her," she said desperately. "She's nothing without me." "No," Mr. Hale replied, his tone cutting through the air like a blade. "She's everything despite you." The words struck harder than any slap. The woman staggered back, mascara smearing under her eyes. She opened her mouth, searching for a final retort, but none came. The red dress that had once glowed in triumph now looked garish in the sun. Mr. Hale knelt in front of Maya, lowering himself to her eye level. "Your father was a good man. He believed in promises. Today I honor his. You are not alone, Maya. From this day forward, you will never face the world without protection." Tears filled the girl's eyes, but for the first time that day, they weren't born of fear. They were relief. She whispered, "Thank you," and clutched his hand tighter. Ms. Raleigh stepped forward, resting a hand on Maya's shoulder. "We'll file immediately. Legally, morally, this is already hers." Mr. Hale rose to his full height, his presence towering over the broken figures of the stepmother and her companion. "Pack your things," he told them without raising his voice. "You don't belong here any more." The stepmother sputtered, "You can't throw me out." "You threw her out," he said calmly. "Consider this balance." The man in blue grabbed the stepmother's arm, tugging her toward the car. The neighbors whispered louder now, their pity gone, their scorn unmistakable. By the time the pair reached the gate, heads hung and pride shattered, the crowd had already chosen their side. Inside the gate, Maya clutched her suitcase and shirts. The mansion loomed above her, no longer a prison, but a promise. She looked up at Mr. Hale. "Can I really stay?" He smiled gently. "You're not staying. You're home." The word struck deeper than any legal paper could. For the first time since her father's passing, Maya allowed herself to breathe freely. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Maya sat on the front steps, wrapped in her father's shirt, watching the light fade. Mr. Hale spoke quietly with Miss Raleigh inside, ensuring every detail of the trust was secured. From the kitchen drifted the smell of food being prepared, the first meal in days that didn't taste of grief. When Mr. Hale finally stepped outside, he found Maya still there, suitcase beside her, eyes fixed on the sky. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Why would you care?" He sat beside her, his pale trousers still faintly stained from the puddle. "Because once when I was young I needed someone to care for me. No one did. I promised myself if I ever saw that look in another child's eyes I wouldn't walk away." She leaned against him, small and fragile, but no longer afraid. "I'll be good. I won't cause trouble." He shook his head. "No, Maya. You don't have to be good to deserve love. You just have to be you." The stars began to appear one by one, and for the first time in a long time, the mansion was filled not with cruelty, but with hope. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.